Good morning, Magic. I'm Gavin Verhey from Wizards of the Coast, and also from the Pauper format panel. We're the group monitoring the format and advising Wizards on ban decisions. So with that said, let's get into it. Let's start by talking about where Pauper is. Commander Masters added a ton of cards into the format, from Cryptic Serpent to Dread Return to All That Glitters to Murmuring Mystic, and more. Hot on the heels of the Lord of the Rings Tales of Middle-earth, the format's had a lot of adjusting to do. Where things seem to have shaken out seems to be with 4 top decks. You've got Mono Red, especially still driven by last year's edition of Monastery Swiftspear, Affinity with the huge pickup of All That Glitters, which you can even strap onto something like a Ginger Brute to end games fast, Caw Gate, which is still kicking in refined from last year, mini picking up Lorien Revealed as a nice new addition, and Terror, which many players have moved away from the previous blue-black versions of to incorporate Cryptic Serpent and play the full package of 4 Terrors, 4 Serpents, and even Delver of Secrets. Of these 4 decks, no one is clearly on top, and from week to week there's variation in their success. This kind of churn back and forth is great. Just underneath those are plenty of other strong decks. Familiars, Boggles, Ponza, Ultratron, Monarch and Initiative decks, and more. So there are certainly lots of viable options, and 4 decks fighting at the top is pretty reasonable for an Eternal format. So on paper, that sounds pretty fine. One thing that just looking at deck diversity doesn't tell you though is the speed of the format, something we've been pretty tightly following. The format has dramatically sped up since last year. If you look at the top decks, all of them but Caw Gate tend to play an extremely fast game plan. Any one of these decks being strong can create an arms race, where keeping up and attacking past each other, like with All That Glitters, is the way to go. There's even a newer breed of deck that uses Monastery Swiftspear alongside Lotus Petal and Goblin Blast Runner to really make an all-in blazing fast red deck that either kills you or fizzles out. Another deck tries to use Balustrade Spy to mill itself into Dread Returns, and while it hasn't been strong, it can be frustrating to have these decks get good draws and beat you before you can do pretty much anything, even if a deck like that hasn't been consistent enough to be too strong. As a result of the format being fast, a lot more of the mid-speed decks have fallen into that second bucket of decks, underneath the top ones. You could argue that if you find ways to give the mid-speed decks more ways to answer the fast ones, or knock out some of the tools from the aggressive decks, that could help change the speed of the format. Now, being a fast format isn't inherently bad, and there are still slower games. For example, Caw Gate is at the top and playing a mid-speed or even controlling strategy. But monitoring that speed and if we should do something is something we've been doing a lot of and talking about. Even if the format is theoretically diverse and balanced, if a lot of games don't allow for you to make a lot of decisions because there are too many super fast strategies that don't allow for you to target them all, that can be a problem. If we wanted to change this, would banning 1 card get the job done? Maybe. It's hard to know what ripple effects a single card may have, and if we wanted to change something, it could require hitting several cards, which would dramatically impact the format and people's favorite decks in a way that's quite difficult to predict. Given the format has relatively good diversity, that's certainly a huge risk to destabilizing it. Would love to hear your thoughts here in the comments below. So one other route we've been talking about again is unbans. Previously, we talked about 2 cards that we investigated and ultimately decided not to unban, Hymn to Turok and High Tide. You can go hear about why in my video covering them. Like last time, this is with the huge caveat that this may not happen as we investigate more, but hearing from you all would be really valuable. At the beginning of last year, the format was in a much different place. Tron had been sitting at the top, along with Affinity, for a very long time. So we axed 2 of its cards, Bonder's Ornament and Prophetic Prism. Tron managed to recover to be alright from these hits, but especially as the format has sped up, it's gotten harder for a deck that really needs to hit 3 specific lands to compete. So we've been talking about unbanning Prophetic Prism to give these decks a tool back. Unlike Energy Refractor, this helps Tron interact early better by giving it access to colored mana to help stop threats and get its engine rolling. Now, to be clear, we don't think this is a major shakeup or anything, but just a slight move to helping Tron compete. The downsides to doing so are that it could once again help out many color affinity decks, like we saw previously. So in unbanning Prism, this could accidentally help out one of the already better performing archetypes, Affinity. Additionally, if we eventually do ban cards to slow the format down, it could put Tron in a much better position to recover, which could be dangerous. What do you think about unbanning Prophetic Prism? Let us know your thoughts in the comments down below or on social media. One other different topic we really want to talk about is what we'll call Name Sticker Goblin. The Daybreak and Magic Online teams did some hard work to try and implement this card on Magic Online, which, given stickers don't really work there, was no easy task. Hats off to them. Getting it to mimic how it works in paper has been extremely challenging, and the card has been showing up in Pauper some. Because of the differences between real life and online play, it has created a slight split in how the card is used. And while there are going to be differences in online and paper, for example, while Magic Online has most cards, not every card ever is available on Magic Online, this is a notable one. Pauper is also a notable format because the vast majority of play happens on Magic Online as opposed to in person. So we're keeping an eye on it, and if it creates too big of a differential, we're not opposed to taking action on this card. So what does all of this mean for today? Well, we're not taking any action today. We'll do another check-in before the end of the year on where we are with these topics and many others. Thanks all for playing, and please feel free to leave any thoughts below. On behalf of the Pauper format panel, we'll talk with you again soon. And remember, you got this. Talisman of Conviction is the aforementioned card featuring the 11th Doctor's bow tie, which you certainly need some conviction to wear. Talisman of Progress is the scarf of the 4th Doctor, flowing as it ever does. Talisman of Creativity is one of my favorites, the 10th Doctor's 3D glasses. Its red and blue lenses